What's up, guys? It's Paul from Boosted Films, and in this episode we're going to take this brand new OEM 4G63 short block, put it all together, and put this engine in. Now, before I jump into what we're putting back in, I'm going to go into some components that we're kind of leaving out. This is the old front oil pump case and the old balance shafts. So we are not putting these balance shafts back in. This is the front case that was basically giving me nightmares because one of the threads was stripped out where the crank position sensor was bolted on. So we got a brand new OEM front case for that. And then we also took out this single disc stock type clutch, and we're putting in a brand new ACT twin disc clutch. So here's a shot of the short block, and this is honestly after Andy probably had a couple hours into prepping this block for me. Andy from ASM is doing almost all the work on this in this episode. He's doing everything here. I'm here to help out with a little bit here and there and also film things as they're going along. But just some details for you guys. I did pick up this brand new OEM short block for about $3,100. It sounds like there's actually more in the States now than I thought. So if you guys wanted to grab one, yeah, $3,100 you can get a brand new OEM short block. Shipping is probably still going to vary from about $300 to $500, I'm guessing, depending on where you live. But it is also worth noting, I think, that this engine, again, already has some time into it. And he put the rear main seal on. He did a lot of the front casing. He did all that other stuff to put this together. When you get a brand new OEM short block, it is literally just the crank rods, pistons, and the block. Like, you're not getting much else. So you need to buy a lot of other stuff or already have it, you know, from an old engine to transfer onto the new one. So I also just released a video recently about this cylinder head teardown, and here is our cylinder head basically getting prepped. Andy worked so fast again, I wasn't able to film like everything as it was going on, but I did catch, a lot of it as much as I could. So this is just getting the EVO 8 cylinder head prepped, ready to go. I found some GSC S1 cams, bought some used ones. That's the same thing I did with my black EVO. I really like those cams. They seem to just come on really quickly. You don't lose any spool, anything like that. You just gain some top end power. So I believe they're a 268 profile, but the GSC S1s are the cams I have in both my EVOs. And I also have brand new GSC zero tick lifters. We went ahead and bought a whole new set of lifters as well. And here we're gonna just put our head gasket on the block. The gasket kit I got for this was basically the OEM full gasket kit. So this is just the OEM Mitsubishi head gasket. And then of course we're just going to set our cylinder head in place. And really, I don't think hardly anyone ever runs the stock head studs anymore. Mine did still have the stock head studs in it. And we're going to swap those out for some ARP head studs. So Andy did most of the hard work on this again. That's going to be a common theme in this video. He did a lot of the technical work just to make this stuff go so much faster. So he was torquing down the head studs, getting everything ready with that. I spent some time getting spark plugs ready, getting the NGK spark plugs, the BPR8 ESs, if I'm not mistaken. Gapped those down to about 20 thousandths and put those in. And of course, I do have a full cam install video, how to basically all set to go. If you want to see that video, I'm going to put a link to that in the video description down below. This video today is really all just kind of about the stuff that I've got done recently to this EVO build. And here we're basically just priming the oil pump, running some oil through the engine, and I cover this as well in my cam install video, but this is just something that's really good to do to double check, make sure the oil is coming through your lifters, coming through your rockers, and that everything's working like it should, and just of course running oil through the system before you actually are firing up the engine. And to do this, you're basically just putting a drill on the front of the oil pump and you're spinning that oil pump over, and that's picking up the oil from your oil pump pickup and then running oil, through your engine. So I was trying my best to help out and keep this job moving along, so I wasn't filming every little thing here, but Andy was kind of working on putting the front of the engine together, so I got a few shots of the front of the engine stuff going together before it was kind of all together. While he was working on that, I was working on some turbo stuff. This engine actually still had the EVO 8 stock turbo, and we're going to swap in an EVO 9 stock turbo. So I was working on taking off the old lines from the old turbo and all the other components from the old turbo, while Andy was working on the front part of this engine. And it's probably worth repeating. I do have a timing belt install video as well. That's a very detailed video. So that's not being covered here today, but I will put that link in the video description as well if you're just interested in that. So here is our stock exhaust manifold, stock O2 housing, stock EVO 9 turbo. I kind of got all that stuff together, got it ready to go, and we wanted to do a bit of a test fit with this while the engine was out of the car, just to make things a lot easier. And well, test fitting, well, what would there be to test fit? Really, it's just kind of the lines. They are a bit different. The coolant and oil lines for the turbo are a bit different between the 8 and the 9. But for the most part, you can actually make them all work, minus basically that oil return line. I think this engine, or this turbo I should say, came with the car, and it came with a return line that I believe was an EVO 9 return line. So I had 2 oil return lines, and the 9 one just seemed to be angled better to fit and bolt to the oil pan. So if you were basically doing this swap and weren't sure what to buy to put an EVO 9 turbo on your EVO 8, the thing you'd for sure probably want to buy is going to be your EVO 9 J-pipe and also your EVO 9 oil return line. So here it is, bolted up, and then I just, again, checked all the lines. There's 2 coolant lines, 2 oil lines. Make sure those are going to work up and line up okay. You have to bend them around a little bit to get them to fit. And basically one of the brackets that holds, I think it was the oil feed line from the head, there's a bracket that's supposed to bolt in place. That one I couldn't get to fit, but the line itself is still going to work just fine. I may swap them out later. If you just want to make this job go easy, if you are swapping on an EVO 9 turbo, yeah, just go ahead and buy all the EVO 9 lines. And speaking of the J-pipe, I'm going to cut ahead a little bit here, of course, to the engine in the car, but this is why you want the 9 J-pipe. It's going to be shorter, not as long as the 8, and you can see that this J-pipe gets really close, basically, to that positive, electrical wire that runs to your starter. It is working. I will say that this setup is actually still currently working with the stock lower intercooler pipe, but it's just generally not recommended. I'm going to swap this one out with an EVO 9 J-pipe as soon as it comes in. So the next thing we're going to do is get our clutch bolted on. We, of course, are taking the engine off the engine stand. We're going to get it on the ground, so we need to get access to the back of the crank so we can bolt on our flywheel and our ACT twin disc clutch. If you are looking for exact detailed how-to as far as transmission prep and installing a clutch in an EVO, I already have those videos. I'll try to include links to those in the video description as well if you want exact how-tos on that. But when it comes to this ACT twin disc clutch, this is basically a brand new item. It hasn't been out for very long, and I am going to do a how-to specifically on installing this clutch as well. But it's not done yet. It'll come out soon though. But here's the quick version of showing the install. Andy had a special tool to keep the flywheel from spinning over, so he put that in place, that stopper, to keep things from turning over. And of course you're going to torque on your flywheel bolts, and then you're going to torque your clutch on as well. Try to utilize the star pattern, make sure you're not putting anything on crooked. Of course, use your clutch alignment tool as well when you are installing your clutch. And I do need to say, I did, spoiler alert, I got to drive this car already with this clutch. It feels pretty awesome, especially for a daily driven car. The clutch feel is so light, and so far there's like no chatter, no noise. This thing, if you are looking for a streetable clutch that can hold some good horsepower, a good amount of torque, this one is, I think it's going to be great. I don't want to speak too soon yet because I want to see how it holds up, of course, to some launches and to actually racing. But the pedal feel is certainly a lot lighter than most any other twin disc you're gonna have on the market. So if you're looking for a light pedal feel and like the lighter feel, don't want that leg workout, this twin disc clutch is basically where you're gonna want to look. And of course we have our monolock collar, another great ACT item that I recommend for most anyone that is putting a clutch in their EVO. Get that ACT monolock collar in so you don't have to worry about your throwout bearing potentially coming out of place and popping out. So once you do have your clutch bolted up, of course you do have to do some prep to your transmission. Again, I have a full video on this, very detailed on what you would need to do to prep your transmission to get it installed. So check the video links. There's going to be a lot of links in this video description here. Throwout bearing, I am utilizing the throwout bearing that came from ACT. So this is an ACT throwout bearing. A lot of people love OEM. I'm not going to say don't go OEM, but this one, just for the record, we're throwing in our ACT throwout bearing. Another thing here that Andy makes look so easy, actually lining things up, getting this transmission on. This can take a long time. If you're doing this yourself, be patient. It could take a while. Believe me, I know it can be frustrating to line things up. Just try not to force it. And of course, don't just like use the bolts to pull things in, because that's probably not right. It should slide on a bit before you end up putting those bolts in place. And before you get too far along, it's a great time to pop in that throw bearing. You should feel it, it should pull in place. The throw bearing is going to push into that monolock collar, and it's going to hold that shifter fork in place. So you always kind of want to do that when you're ready, and not wait too long before you get too far in the process. Because if for some reason it doesn't pop in right and you're taking that transmission off, you're just making way more work for yourself if you don't check that as soon as you're ready to. All right, here we go. This is certainly another case where it's awesome to have a hoist. It makes this so much easier. I've dropped in an engine and transmission myself before on my black EVO in that build, and without using a hoist. And I didn't actually even have a transfer case at the time, and porting the transfer case in later was such a pain. So of course the first thing we did here was get the transfer case in place. We had a ratchet strap on it to pull it over to the side, kind of keep it out of the way. But it's amazing to me that if this was real-time footage, honestly, this was 20 minutes, 25 max, getting this whole engine in. It went incredibly smooth, but that's what you get when you basically work with someone that has done this before and has all the right tools. It's just really nice. And the way we ended up going about this one is basically putting the car up in the air, bringing the engine underneath, and then we brought the cherry picker back in to just kind of help us finagle things around a little bit and get it in place. There's more than one way to do this for sure. So this is not, the only way to do it. You could drop the engine in from the top, of course. You could do multiple different things here, but this is just the way that worked well for us to get this engine in place. And it bears repeating, this process is just so much nicer when you have, the chance to bring the car up and down with the hoist, and also the chance to bring the engine up and down with the cherry picker or engine hoist, whatever you want to call it. So that just made this go very smooth. And once the engine was pretty much in place, so we were putting in motor mounts, the transmission mount that's on the driver's side, the passenger side mount, that engine mount, put those two mounts in first. And once we kind of had the engine held in place, we brought the car back up so we could work underneath it easily, and then we got that transfer case mounted in place as well. Then we got to take a nice little break. There was a Nismo GTR that came in just to get some baseline numbers on the dyno and see what it was putting down. So here you go. Enjoy this GTR putting down 570 wheel horsepower. Bone stock. So let's get back to the EVO build here. I'm just trying to show as much as I can in this process so it could help you guys out if you're looking for certain shots, for the way certain things look. Just trying to get you a feel for how everything looked, how we put things in. Of course, you can see I took that turbo back off, the whole turbo setup, I took it back off the engine for drop-in purposes. It makes it easier to drop it in without any extra length basically on the engine or extra width. And next again, we utilized our OEM gasket, the exhaust gasket, and I put the turbo in place. It's kind of nice to drop this all in as one piece, especially when the radiator's out, all that stuff is out of the way. Kind of makes things a lot easier. It can be done with your radiator in, you just have to be a bit more careful. And fast forward to hooking up a lot of coolant lines, a lot of oil lines, a lot of plugs, stuff like that, hooking everything up, putting the power steering back in place, putting a serpentine belt back on. I'm actually leaving the air conditioning pump off on this one, running the non-AC belt for this car, since mostly it won't be used in too warm of climates. And that was about it. That was all in a day's work here. Two guys, of course, working on this car, but it was still amazing to me that basically in about 7 to 8 hours, we went from a short block to an assembled long block to dropping everything in to installing a clutch. So this was just fantastic to get so far on this car in one day. I said before things were going to start moving fast, and they certainly have. So that's it, guys. That's all we got for this update video so far. I'm so happy that we were able to move so quickly on this car. It's been awesome that it's been coming together so well. As always, I appreciate everyone watching. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate people reaching out to me. And of course, if I did anything wrong, please let me know. If you want to leave a comment, please do so in the comment section down below. And stay tuned, because less than 24 hours after filming this episode, I filmed another one. And this car is moving under its own power. As always, this is Paul from Boosted Films, and thanks so much for watching.